Here he is again, the man with the big orange hands. And today... Oh, I know. The beard is the only thing in the picture. That's also the only important thing. Today I have an air rifle to present. Well, not exactly. This is my first Haenel that I've gotten my hands on. We all know Haenel is from East Germany. The most common best-selling items at Airgun are flying off the shelves, 20 models. Things are flying off the shelves at Airgun in incredible numbers. So every weekend, wow, I don't know, 20 in different model versions, of course. They pretty much made everything, from carnival shooting gallery repeaters to youth air rifles, competition air rifles, they did it all. The interesting thing about this is the first rifle. Have on the table here without the F mark. Yeah, why? We all know, everyone who watches this channel knows this, that air rifles made before the first, what was it, January 1st? Or January 1st? April. I don't know, if they were released in 1970, they don't have to have the F mark because it didn't even exist back then. Yeah, and this thing here is definitely from well before 70. I'll mention newer numbers in a moment. But now there's something extra, namely, that when East Germany was around, the West German law didn't apply at all. So logically, there was no F mark until 1991. And therefore, old ownership is also free there. The funny thing is, this thing doesn't have an F mark, and is completely legal. And the 7.5 joule limit doesn't apply to this thing as long as it remains unchanged. So if you stuff a murder export spring in there, then nature has nothing to do with it anymore, and it also has something to do with protection of ownership. Whatever. So here we have a very simple Haenel model 322. This is the successor to hopefully I can get it all together. From the Roman 3 line 284. Well, then there was only the line 60 and the line 61, and then at some point this came along. Jörg showed one on his channel that has both. It says both the old designation, so 3 line 284 school mark, and then model 302. So there are Wolpertingers that were somewhere in between. There are also variations with the equipment, with the GR, with the sights. There are always these little, how should I put it? Defector. Well, that's not all uniform. Whatever. Let me start reading the rifle to you. Here we only have a serial number that, well, I'd say is handcrafted. So, the master didn't sit there and chisel out the 4. There wasn't anyone standing there either. It didn't put in headlines, but it's a roll engraving, that's what it's called. So there's a machine that makes it, and afterwards there are deep grooves in it that just happen to be in the shape of a number. Except, on top it actually just says Model 302 and the company logo. I'll just show you this because there's really not much else to see here. Can you see it? No, right. So really difficult. Maybe a little bit in the angled light. Well, it's not that important either. There are experts in this Haenel area, there are collectors, there's a whole lot. Yeah, and with that, I've already read the rifle to you completely. It's noticeable that there's no prism rail here. So, I couldn't get a shot group with a scope, which is why we're just going to hop along carefully. Here, this is it. 10 meters sitting supported. Without a scope, so open sights. Yeah, unfortunately, there was no other way to do it. It's relatively inaccurate. It's up to me. I don't think it's the rifle, even though this piece was made between 66 and maybe just shy of 70. So they were built until 69. So this thing is now 40, 50, 60, 65. 50, 60, 65. So it's not quite 70 years old. 1,000, that's how it looks. All good. You see, I've used a different target than usual because I need a lot of contrast with my poor old eyes and the front and rear sights. That's not exactly easy. That's why I usually use a scope. Now for some, the most interesting part, which is about the muzzle energy. So, one of the reasons why they are so popular is probably because the F mark doesn't apply to this. Then, of course, I measured it and was really curious about what the results would be. So it comes out to 8.5 joules, 8.4, 8.2, 8.5, 8.5, 8.4, 7.5, 8.3, 8.0, 8.2. So that's how it goes down. That would be a bit above according to the German proof regulations. So, if you push all the tolerances to the limit, right? 8 on average, 8.5 for outliers. So an E above the average, somewhere between 8.2 and 8.3, let's say roughly, and it doesn't matter at all in Germany. That also explains why the state isn't cracking down rigorously on many things, and oh my god, 7.5 joules, no, then 7.6 joules, the world is ending. No, it doesn't. Tens of thousands of such rifles are circulating in Germany completely legally. The world isn't ending. And everyone at the office knows that. So, 20 shots high, 190 men, low, 178 men, average 187 mir S, spread 12 mir. It's certainly quite decent. I still find it somewhat mediocre. Standard deviation 3 ms, all good. So, and that's completely normal for a rifle of this type. Of course, I did a bit of research. So for the Model 302, you find everything from just under 7.5 to about 12 joules. That's how it comes from the factory. When you install a new original spring, it actually goes even further. The seal in here is made of leather, which means it likes to be oiled. And you know what happens when you spray oil into an air rifle. The diesel effect, which means it gets compressed, there's an ignition, not a big bang by the way, but just the presence of, how should I put it, oil particles, maybe just because they oil the barrel, can have a significant impact on the muzzle velocity. This thing hits before oil, which is good because oil is good for metal. Let's start with the stock. The stock, because it does something. The stock is relatively long. The whole shotgun is quite long. I just wanted to mention that. So that's already quite long, which is why there's that silly saying about the muzzle loader. The wood looks like it's been really enjoyed by someone, but they took better care of the metal than the wood. Well, the thing is somehow 70 years old. Down here you can see a bit of wear, so no material is actually missing. But whatever was on there as a finish is pretty worn down. Otherwise, it just looks like how an air rifle looks from the early 2000s. A steel butt plate, and it's blackened with slotted screws. That already says a lot about its age. No one uses slotted screws after a certain point. It's always Phillips from then on. So, yeah, there isn't much to say about the wood. Well, I noticed there are 1, 2, 3 stock screws that connect the whole system to the metal, holding the trigger guard. But I don't know. The trigger guard is made of metal, steel, and it really looks like solid material. This isn't just a thin metal strip. It's good German craftsmanship. In this case, good East German craftsmanship. But that doesn't matter at all. The trigger blade is made of steel, U-shaped, and nice and smooth, so there's nothing to complain about there. The trigger is pretty hard. I'm going to measure this right away. So I'm just going to take this here. Otherwise, I'll definitely forget it. It's hard. And I really just read that this fine piece is supposed to have an adjustable trigger and that there's no hole for it, so you have to take the guard off every time. I just couldn't imagine that at all. And I saw a photo of someone who just drilled a hole in there, and I looked at it. Yeah, where is it? Yeah, where is it? Yeah, and if you look in here, I know the camera can see that, especially without light. So if you look behind the trigger all the way up, there's a shiny silver screw with slot, like a slotted screw, and you really can't get to it, no matter how hard you try, without taking off the bracket. And that's supposed to be the screw for adjusting the trigger. I didn't do that, and I didn't try it either. You can read it for yourselves. The internet is vast, and has a cornucopia of information, waiting for you to show up and share it all with you. I don't care. I just wanted to have one of those things. Especially the Model 322 has the reputation of being indestructible. That means the thing just keeps running and running and running. And after 70 years, these things are still being sold in large quantities. So not new, obviously. 2001. Yeah, but they're on their way. Then let's take a look one floor up, namely metal. No scope. But an automatic safety. Nice HUD. I don't know when this was made, but it was before 1970, and they've already annoyed people with an automatic safety. I have to admit, it's an automatic safety that feels good, it's in the right place, and it's wide, right? That means 2001. There are also, like here, ways and means to just take it out. But we're in an area where someone could always say, well, this is actually a collector's item. You really shouldn't mess with that. You won't break anything. I see one too. It doesn't really concern me much overall. Then we have a notch. A ladder sight. You see, the ladder sight is set to the highest position for 10 meters. It's obviously a subgroup of the spring sight, but that's relatively unimportant. It rattles little to nothing. That speaks for quality. Yeah, what else should I really say? I'll show you again. There's a missing front sight protector. Yeah, I know, you're just a camera. Otherwise, I wouldn't be holding the shotgun right in front of you. I say that every time, because someone might be seeing a video like this for the first time. You see notches on the right and left of the front sight base. Normally there's a metal thing that goes over it, like a front sight tunnel, so to speak. The front sight is a roof sight, so it's kind of triangular, and the rear sight is the opposite, namely a V sight, as was common back then. So there was a V, and then on the other side, how do I get a roof shape with my fingers somehow? So, whatever, you know what I mean. 2001, yeah, and the rest is really, if you have the term air rifle in mind, like a standard 15 rifle, that they do it just like that. Yeah, from the trigger. No, one more thing. So bending and everything is relatively simple here with the bolt, and I would say, let me pull it back properly. No, I'll do it just a little bit first. So you can see just a little bit, and then it gets heavy, and then it gets really heavy, and then it gets really heavy. When I pulled the thing back, I said, wow, I've never experienced anything like this. Something must really come out of it. But it actually doesn't, at least not that much. So you expect around 40-50 joules to be sent out, but nothing happens. But what we have here is a really worn out seal. It's completely flat. So when I look over this, I don't see any elevation. But I think at the gun center, I believe it's called the gun center, it shouldn't be a problem. Ah, yes, very nice. Oil. It shouldn't be a problem to get a new one. I just don't bother doing it myself because the future buyer can take care of that. So I can break this thing down without... Definitely not, but without a pellet. Yeah. By the way, the trick, pulling the trigger, while it's secured, works here too. You can really notice how it makes a click in the barrel, that something is changing. Then I take it off safety, and I have a long pull. And still a hard, but very immediate one. So there's no pressure point. But something happens immediately, nothing else happens. If I secure it first, then I hardly have any pull. I pull. On the other hand, if I first secure use end, then I have little advantage. Pull. Rock hard trigger, but again, there's no scratching, nothing at all. So, for being, let's say, a proper trigger, it's actually quite decent. You can't say it any other way. I'm telling you, that's the old quality still. They always say everything from East Germany was second rate. Not this rifle. So what they've done here is really decent. So the pellet is in. Now I'm going to do it again. You know, I'm sitting a bit awkwardly here because I always aim along the side of the barrel. At this short distance, it doesn't suit us at all. So let it come down carefully. Yeah, you know, it's still just a bit more of a very short pull and then automatic safety. Yeah, it sounds different too. But that also has to do with the fact that I have a different pellet trap set up, because regular pellet trap, since it's the shortest, is the one I have here. I don't know, I always crop a bit of the image later. Whether you can see it, to be honest, I don't really care. So, and now we're also testing the trigger weight here. Unfortunately, I always won't have to load a pellet. That's always a bit annoying with air rifles, at least with spring piston air rifles. With a real weapon, you can just pull the trigger empty and it goes click. But you're not supposed to do that with air guns. And that's why it makes not just a click here, but also a clack. Then let's take a look at that. Now I have to somehow record this while chatting away. It could get interesting, because the trigger weight is going to be quite high. But the rod bends too. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 3, 4, 5, 6, 27, 28, 29, 3, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 27, 28, 29 kilo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 44 kilo. Kilo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 44 kilos. Wow, 5 kilos. 5.6. 5.7. So I briefly saw the 5.8. And this rod was straight before. So you see, when I say a deduction is relatively good, it is relative. Because there's a huge difference between a light trigger and a crisp trigger. So if I had one with 5 kilos and I was scratching, that would be a nightmare. The way it is now, it's hard, but it breaks immediately. So if I had that one with 5 kilos and I was scratching, that would be a nightmare. The way it is now, it's hard, but it breaks immediately. So then the 5 kilos aren't that bad. So that was it. That was bouts. Then we've covered that as well. Yeah. Is there anything else historical that comes to mind? Yeah, built in Seoul, like I said, hammers, lots and lots of hammers, rifles. I can totally understand that there are collectors for that. These things are all relatively old. They're free from the annoying castration requirement. And that's already quality. So if you can get your hands on one of those, especially for collectors, for those who don't necessarily want to shoot but want to collect, there are stock options in all sorts of colors. There are different configurations. This thing has been built over many years, sometimes with this vision, sometimes with that one. As I said, check out Haenel if you need to. He's practically a specialist for these things. And he also has a beard. That alone makes him likable to me. And he has everything from them and whatever. Anyway, look, when I think of it, I think I'll put a link underneath. And I think that's it. Did I get that right? I forgot something. And actually, I don't need to check for a PTP approval because the PTP approval has only been available in Germany since 2003 for air rifles like the Haenel 302. And I paid €97 for an old spring piston air rifle. Is that overpriced? Hard to say. Such a price comes about based on bids. So if a lot of people are bidding, there's a high demand, then it just gets expensive. And now it depends, I would sell them off again at some point. And then it depends on whether maybe the additional information, the measurements, for example, from my cave machine, whether that makes any difference. Either way, I found it really interesting. I'm going to keep looking into the Haenels, if only under the general term, because I'm running out of rifles, especially the affordable air rifles that I didn't already have here. And then there's the Hell, of course, which is a huge area, but I don't need to cover that. Others have already done it. And like I said, I need a scope machine because my eyes are too old for things like open sights and such. The condition is, if you look at how the stock looks, and then look at the rest, which is metal, I have to say there was still some bluing left. Wow. If the stock has worn down that much, the barrel must have taken just as much wear. And I mean, you almost always have sweaty hands on the front here when cocking it, and there's nothing here. So I would say, if you wait a few more weeks, you'll definitely find the first rust spots, because I can see the first signs of it in the light. I guess the previous owner has already been diligent about oiling it before sending it off. Still, for me, this isn't really my specialty, but I have to admit, this is quality. It's handcrafted from the good old days. Because otherwise, these things wouldn't be lying around for 70 years, and people buy them like crazy. I'm rambling, I'm babbling again, so I would say I'm going to fade out now. We professionals call that an out phase, right? A fade out. Is that what it's called? Was that right? Yeah. I would really like to say something more about it. I found it so interesting. I've never had one. And yeah, that's all been said. Oh, this doesn't really fit here. But this is a hollow rivet, right? And this here is a roll pin that you can drive out. Whatever. So, thank you very much for watching. I hope something from my rambling was somehow meaningful for you, or at least interesting or entertaining. That would be enough for me. Then we'll see each other with the next little rifle that somehow flutters into my house. I thank you all very much for your incredible patience, as always, and now everyone in unison. The man who has to handle his camera all by himself, without any minions, without any crew, without any helpers. It's a cross. 2001.